Welcome everyone to another season of Carberry Conversations, and thank you for joining me. My name is Sandra Perrone. I am an associate professor teaching photography, philosophy, and honors seminar courses here at STCC. I am also the gallery coordinator of the Amy H. Carberry Fine Arts Gallery located in Building 28. The Carberry Gallery exhibitions are intended to foster intellectual engagement beyond the traditional classroom. The gallery represents a unique learning environment that breaks preconceived notions of a gallery as an exclusive space, while sharing who artists are and what they create, inspiring students to pursue their own creative endeavors and career goals. One of the primary objectives of the gallery is to bring to campus and the greater Springfield community a wide range of media, ideas, and artistic practices that expose viewers to an array of creative and intellectual work. At STCC, fine arts courses are open to everyone, and the importance of visual literacy to every student's overall education cannot be understated, no matter their major. The Carberry Conversations is a series of interviews between myself and exhibiting artists originally conceived in response to the pandemic. Each interview is as different as the artist and artwork featured and covers a wide variety of topics, including origin stories, the impact of current events on artistic process, and the function of art and photography during times of crisis. Today's virtual event kicks off the fall 2022 semester here at the gallery with Canadian painter L.G. Talbot. She holds a master's degree from Lesley College in Boston and a BFA from the University of Tennessee. She attended the Penland School of Craft in North Carolina, studying under Robert Turner, and the Appalachian Center for Craft at Tennessee Tech University. Her work has been exhibited in numerous solo exhibitions, including the 5 Points Gallery in Torrington, Connecticut, and the Hamden Gallery at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, as well as group exhibitions throughout New England. Her exhibition, entitled Abstracted, is on view at the Carberry Gallery through September 30th, and there will be an in-person reception on Saturday, September 17th from 3 to 5 p.m. The gallery and all events are free and open to the public. Due to scheduling conflicts, we pre-recorded our interview in the gallery. So here's our 19-minute unedited conversation from August 31st. Thank you, Laura, for your amazing show here. We're in the Amy H. Carberry Gallery. It is fall of 2022. And your show is the first return to something resembling normal here in this space. So I first want to thank you because I know it's been a long journey. You and we've been, I don't know how long our emails have been going back. They go back a ways. And so I appreciate your patience.
Thank you.
And I am so thrilled that you're sharing this work with the greater Springfield community. I do want to start with early influences because I am always constantly fascinated with when people thought they might want to be an artist. So if you could say a little bit about an early influence, like maybe when you thought you wanted to be an artist.
So I don't think I have a lot of early influences. Mm-hmm. I know you had mentioned family, but I don't think I have a lot of family influences. I do remember taking a ceramics class somewhere in high school and enjoying it, but it wasn't until I got to college that I found myself in the art department.
Yeah. So you went to Lesley College, now Lesley University?
No, that's where I got my master's.
So okay.
My bachelor's, I got a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Tennessee.
Okay, all right. So you started out, though, as a ceramicist.
I did. Yeah.
What drew you to ceramics?
I absolutely love ceramics. So when I was getting my bachelor's, I thought at first I was going to be a photographer. And then someone tried to convince me that I should go into art education, and I didn't want to do that. And then I was in a sculpture program, and then I was in ceramics. And as soon as I started working with clay, I fell in love. So
yeah. What do you think the experience of taking art classes had on you? Like, what was the importance? Because you could be into ceramics and not go to school, right? Yeah. But you were in college when it sounds like in those formative art experiences when those experiences were happening. So
Was that an important part of the development? Was being in college classes and having that rigorous critique, or like what was your experience like when you were in class?
Oh, I feel a little stumped on this question.
Oh.
I mean, I feel like, when I got into class, people had a lot more experience than me because maybe they had high school, art or did summer classes, or their parents sent them here or there. And for me, I was jumping in as a newbie.
Yeah.
So.
And you haven't stopped.
I haven't stopped.
Right. Well, but this is interesting because we're talking about like this formative experience in college as a ceramicist, but we are sitting in a show of paintings.
Yep.
So what happened between doing work in ceramics for all those years? Because it wasn't just a short time, right? I mean, it was years, right? When did you sort of make that leap to painting? And specifically, like some of the work that we're seeing in this space.
I think I was painting in grad school on the side. For me, I've always struggled with my ceramics because I really like big vessels. I love Peter Volkis was this Greek little guy, and he did these. Are you familiar with him?
No.
Huge.
Tell me.
I mean, huge hand-built vessels, and I loved them, and they were very expressive. So I was not drawn to pottery. I did not want to do tableware. I wanted to do art, but out of clay.
Yeah, big.
Big. I wanted to do big art. So I did. I did a lot of hand building. But for me, I was so frustrated by glazing and the outcome of clay. I really loved clay when it's soft or leather hard because it's so tactile. And for me, as soon as it's fired in a bisque, I lose interest. I'm like, I'm done with that.
So it's really process driven.
Yeah, it is process.
Yeah, and the
Everything
labor of
about
it
is process for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So the pandemic happens.
Yeah.
What impact did the pandemic have on this body of work specifically?
So this was all during the pandemic, all this work. For me, I have a studio at Cottage Street in East Hampton, and we were not supposed to be in the building, but I was in that building every single day. And it was quiet and it was creepy, and I had a hard time at first, but I showed up every day. And for me, it's all about showing up, and I just got to work. And that's what I did.
Yeah,
I
every
painted
day.
Every day.
Do you still do that?
I still do that. I
Yeah.
still go to the studio every day.
And how do you motivate yourself to do that? Like, I mean, I'm in awe. I think that's amazing. Like, I can't do the same thing every day.
Yeah.
I need variety. But how do you motivate yourself? How do you stick to it, even when you're maybe having trouble in the studio or work isn't working out? How do you stay motivated?
So I think that's harder for me now because I'm struggling with my work. But just showing up. And some days I don't do anything, I'll be honest. I'm sitting in the studio and I might be just, wandering, doing laps in the studio or pacing, looking at my work, drawing, or not doing anything, but I'm there and I'm in the space.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I was amazed. I mean, so I went to your studio last fall. It was last fall.
Was that before I had moved to the other studio?
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
I was in the space,
Yeah.
and I go in, and it was like wall-to-wall art, and there was a huge stack of canvases on the floor,
Yeah.
like a foot deep, and paint all over, and it was really amazing because it was like very clear this is the only thing that happens in this space, right?
Yeah.
But I really appreciated seeing, because it's just a little insight, right, into like, well, this is where it happens, right? And these are really, really large canvases. We've never had a show cover this much wall space ever. Okay, so you take the award for most coverage, most
I'll
wall
take
coverage.
it.
But I just wonder, like, so does the space sometimes dictate how big you go? Do you want to be even larger, or is this really like the max for you?
So I'm in a bigger space, but Anything over 8 feet is too big for me, maybe even 7 feet at this point, because I just can't handle that size painting, especially when I want to, flip it, the angle of it, and work on it, unless I go and knock on the door and get someone to help.
Yeah.
So they're just too big, so I've started painting a little smaller.
Okay.
As you can see.
A little smaller.
little
Well,
tiny.
in this show, the show that's up right now, Abstracted, I think the smallest one is like 51 inches by 51 inches, and then the range is up to like 76 inches by 76 inches. And I know we were concerned about like how to fit it through the doorway and everything, so there were. I remember just being acutely aware of like the size was going to be a potential.
Me too. I'm like, am I going to be able to get my paintings through that door?
Yeah.
Yep.
So let's talk about abstraction, right? What does it mean to you to have an abstract image versus representation, where like, a flower looks like a flower or a person looks like a person, like. What drew you to creating abstract painting?
I've always loved abstract art. I mean, going back to the Expressionism and, the Germans and American abstract art. I mean, I've always been drawn to abstract art. Never realism.
Never.
Wow. Nope.
No. I mean, there's no judgment here. There's no judgment. No, but I appreciate all forms of art.
Yeah.
But I definitely I'm sure you've done this. When you go to MoMA, and there's those enormous Jackson Pollocks, that are like a whole wall is just a Jackson Pollock painting, and it's kind of incredible that like he created this painting on the floor, right? Do you paint on the floor, on the wall?
I paint on the wall. I've had people suggest to me that I should paint on the floor, but I love to paint on the wall. For me, it's very physical painting. I like to walk around the room. I like to get a lot of perspective. And when I'm on the floor, I want my arms and legs are always moving. So I like to attack the wall.
So one of the things that you had mentioned is that did shift during the pandemic was like how you put that paint on.
Yep.
Right? Can you talk a little bit about that shift?
So my work has shifted so much. I was doing more kind of literal figures. And I don't even know why I was doing them and where my work was going, but I just was like trusting the processing, trying to get to the other side. Did I answer? I wasn't sure what your question.
No, but like how do you apply that paint now versus before the pandemic? Because you had mentioned like having all this time, dedicated time. You're there at 8 a.m. Ready to go. That you were applying the paint differently, or that the way that you were putting the paint on, I mean, because they are so big, like how do you make such bold, big marks on the canvas?
So I've never used the brush in my life until like recently. These are all done with plastic palette scrapers or anything from the hardware store that a mason would use.
Oh wow.
And also I started using rollers, printmaking rollers. Mostly these were done with big knives, and that's the way I like to do it. And the rollers, I like using the rollers. So I was experimenting with some of these paintings have a lot of turpentine, so I was not watering them down, but thinning them out, and that's what gives the drips.
Right.
So I was applying rollers and knives.
That's great.
Anything I could get my hands on, really.
Right. Well, I mean, because it matters, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when a visitor comes into this space, they're going to see these layers.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them are layered more than others, but
Right.
and some of them have more variety of colors than others. But that there's layer upon layer upon layer. Do you ever have? I mean, have you ever had this in your artistic career? A work that just failed in your eyes, or just didn't work, or something that you just wanted to throw away?
Oh, sure, all the time. I just stick it in that pile in the middle of the room, and I'm like, I'll get back to that painting.
So but what happens to that work? What happens to the discard pile? Do you ever revisit those?
Sometimes I do.
Really?
Some of my older work I have revisited and worked from those paintings or reworked them or added different elements. So yes.
So they're never truly trashed, though. You're not like
No.
you're not doing like a bonfire
I'm not like
in the
chucking
yard
them
or
out
something.
the window.
Okay,
No.
okay. Because there's some artists who do like a clean slate. They're like burning stuff in the backyard,
Yeah,
and there's other artists who like put stuff aside and then they revisit it 2 years later and they're like, oh, what is this? And I didn't know I did this. And then they add something completely different to it because they're in a different place, and then it's successful in their eyes. So.
I don't do it very often, but once in a while I do, but that's not usually my style.
Yeah. Well, so that kind of leads me to like, what do you think is going to be next in your artistic career,
So
in your work?
My work has already changed so much because I'm using a paintbrush.
Yes. Yeah.
And as I've said, I've never used the paintbrush. In 20 years, I've never used the paintbrush.
Right. So you're in a bigger studio.
I'm in a bigger studio
with a paintbrush.
With paintbrushes.
Okay.
And I'm in a different place with approaching the art with the paintbrush. So.
Well, and I think this also, we should note this too. You're teaching.
Yep.
K through 5.
Yep. But I just started.
And you just started, right.
Yeah.
But do you think that's going to have an impact on the stuff that you create outside of school? Or, how might that impact your work? If it does, if at all.
I don't really know.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, we'll stay tuned.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I find it fascinating that you are going back, and you had mentioned earlier, you didn't want to do the art education track or whatever. But that here you are.
Yeah.
You're embarking on this totally new endeavor, right? Like teaching K through 5, and the excitement that art students at that age, because everybody, is an artist, right? And I don't know at what point do we decide that, I can't draw or I can't paint, or, and some of us decide we're still going to do it even if we can't, even if we shouldn't. But
I think I always wanted to teach, but I didn't want to teach coming out of school. I know I've done things backwards because I've done my own art for like 20 years.
Yeah.
But I really jumped into teaching because of the pandemic, because there were so many jobs available in art, and I could choose from job to job.
Yeah. I think it's exciting. I mean, I'm excited for you.
Yeah, me too.
I'm really excited.
Thank you.
So, do you feel optimistic?
Oh, always.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's something I feel like I've gotten from getting to know your work and getting to know you, is that you do seem to be optimistic even when things are not going great.
Yes.
You always seem to have a sense of like, it's going to be fine. Things are going to work out.
I live.
I admire that.
I'm like,
Yeah. Well, so this brings me up to inspiration. Okay. What do you wish you knew as a younger art student in college or maybe after college? Like was there something that you would advise a younger student, and not K through 5, but like our 6 students, who there's a wide range of ages, obviously, but adult students, who some of whom are starting out, some of whom are coming back to school after being absent for a long time, but someone who really loves art and wants to major in fine arts. What would you say they should do?
I am terrible at advising people, but I think as long as one, for me, I just had such passion about art, and I knew I wanted to do it once I figured out I wanted to do it. And I feel like everyone has to, get to the other side. And I don't know where I fit in as far as, helping people along that path.
Well, I want you to know you are helping people along that path by sharing this work. I mean, like you're not doing it in maybe the way that you would think, like, well, I'm going to tell you this is my advice, but you're demonstrating,
right?
In your action, in this recording of your motion across the canvas, you're showing people.
Yeah. Well, it's important to me. I want to see my work on the walls.
Yeah.
And that's really important to me.
Yeah. Well, what was it like when you came into this space and saw them all
Oh, it
up
was
on the wall?
fantastic. I'm just so excited to see all this work on the walls. I think it looks great. I'm
Well, because we've
super
been,
psyched.
you know, you talk about working in isolation,
Yeah.
you know, you're the only one in Cottage Street,
Yeah.
you snuck in the back door.
Yeah.
And
no one's seen
and
this.
no
I
one's
mean,
seen it, yeah.
You know, my stuff's sitting in piles, so for me,
Yeah.
you know, I don't have a clean wall. I don't know what a clean wall is. So
Yeah.
when I see something on a clean wall and I can get perspective in a different way, I'm like, this is awesome.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Well, I think it's great. Again, I can't thank you enough for sharing this work, for sharing the process, and I hope that people are able to come to the gallery and take in the work in person.
Yep.
Because I think work this large needs to be seen in person.
Yep.
And that, you know, seeing the work on a website is just a little,
Right.
it's just a little
Yeah, a
thumbnail.
little
So-
snippet,
A
yeah.
little snippet. So I really hope that people are able to come in
Me
person.
too.
But if they're not, you know, the images are available, you know, online. But nothing really replaces standing in front of a work
Definitely.
of art. So,
Yeah.
so thank you for your work. Thank you for this conversation.
Thank you
And
so
I
much.
look forward, you're welcome, and I look forward to seeing what comes down the pipe
Yeah,
in
yeah.
your next show.
Yep. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.